Hello everybody. Let's get started finishing off this project with the solar system. Now is the time to look around, try to determine if you've got everything in the position that you want. I've taken some time to finish off the last planets on their motion paths, but you may notice that from my last tutorial I've actually taken some time to look at each one of the planets, simply scale them up if I need to, if I want to see them a little bit better in the final render. Obviously I don't want to scale them too big so that they're clipping into each other. But now's the time to think about how big you want each one of the planets to be, because in earlier renders they were just way too tiny. One thing I do want to point out when we're dealing with scale, if I look over here in the channel box editor, that the scales are actually not linked to the motion paths constraint. So you don't have to worry about changing the scale and having those being animated. So you can always change the scale after you've added your planets or your objects to a motion path. So you can make them bigger if need be. Like for example, I might want to grab Jupiter and just make it a little bit bigger. So now's the time to make those kinds of decisions. We're going to have to frame this now in a camera. And I want the camera to be nicely animated around my scene. But before I do that, I think I'm going to just spend a little bit of time looking at lighting and rendering for a second here. If I pop my renderer now, the only light source that I have currently in my scene is my sun. And it's doing an okay job, but I've done so much work on texturing all of these planets and making them move that it might be nice to think about, bringing out that that detail a little bit more. So I could grab this light that is outside of my sun, and I could try to mess around with, the intensity of our light. I've already bumped mine up pretty hot here to 6,000, just to send enough light out to the edge of the solar system. And I think that's going to work okay for the scale at which I've set up my project. But in terms of rendering, we have to first of all think about what is framed. So I'm going to open up what's called here the film gate, and that's going to show me what the renderer is actually going to capture. So now when I hit Arnold render, it's a little bit difficult to see because it's not that bad. It's actually going to show me the extents of my frame, which is nice. Let's just double check some settings. And I know some of you were asking me about this. So Arnold settings, we need to hop into those. And I'm just going to pop those open here. And what's important for this exercise is that we render it out. And I'm just scrolling down in the common settings. That I'm going to be rendering 1920 by 1080. You'll also see here that it says that there's a renderable camera. So we don't have a camera in the scene right now, so it's currently rendering from perspective view, which is one of the default cameras that's set up in the outliner to begin with. So let's think about that for a second. I'll turn off my film gate. And just from the view that I'm looking at right now, and I've spent a moment to just scroll in and scroll out just to sort of frame up my entire shot. I'm going to put a camera into the scene, and you can do that by just simply saying view, create camera from the view, and it creates a new camera object. It'll give it a bad name, persp1, so it generated it from perspective. So I'm just going to call that my main camera, like so. And if we go into isometric view and we take a look, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, we'll see that there is a camera object hanging out up here. I just tapped the F key in order to zoom in on that. But there is a camera now in the scene that's far enough away from the overall shot just to give me an indication as to how far away that's going to have to be in order to frame everything out. All right, now I'm currently looking at everything in split view here. So that's why you're not seeing it in quad view when I click my space bar. I'm just putting my mouse over the region I want to zoom in and out of, and tapping the space bar. All right, so I've got a camera in my scene now. There's another way to do this where I want to see exactly what is going to be framed in the final render. So if we go down into Frame, Camera Settings, we can say, show us the safe action. And that will put this rectangular box into my frame. And that shows me exactly what's going to be rendered while I'm moving my camera around. So that's showing you what's being captured inside of the renderable frame. Now just to double check, let's turn on Film Gate. It's not the same. It's not the same. Right? So let's just leave that on. So under View, Camera Settings, we're going to turn on Safe Action. That's going to show me exactly what's going to be rendered perfectly. So yeah, now we've got a camera in our scene. We can hit Arnold, Render. And once more, I want to think about the lighting. Now, in space, we don't have a light source behind our planets. The next nearest star would be thousands of light years away. So it's not really illuminating the background, the backside of our planets. So this is not reality. So what I might do, and I want to be really careful with this because I don't want to blow out the shot completely. Under Arnold, I'm going to add in a new sky dome light, and I'm going to call this light something like background lighting. Right? That's its only job, is to give a little bit of light to the backside of our planets. Now you don't have to do this, but I might want to do this just to lighten up the backside of my planets. Now you can see here that it's really blown out, and that's not what I want in the final render. I want it to look somewhat accurate to what's going on out there in the solar system. So first things first, with my light chosen, my background lighting, I'm just going to decrease the intensity a considerable amount, actually. I just maybe want to lighten up the backside of, say, Jupiter, for example, so I can see it a little bit. Once more, not scientifically accurate, but this is just as much a pre-visualization or an artistic rendering of the solar system as it is scientifically accurate. So I've got a lot of light on the front end, on the front side, and now I've just got a little bit of light on the back side. Maybe even my intensity would be fine at 0.1. Okay? But what's frustrating about this right now is that the world all around it, the background has got this gray tinge to it. And that's because the light itself is currently visible to the camera, meaning it can be rendered. So if I just drop this value down and I just scroll down in the area light, or sorry, in the Arnold light, I just scroll down in the attributes and just decrease its renderability. So it's not renderable now to the camera, and that's brought us back to black. And we're seeing a much nicer view of all of the hard work that we put into this project, including our lonely planet hanging out here, which is blue. Now I'm going to do another interesting move here. My camera's rendered nicely, and my computer's starting to whir up a bit. I just want to point out that over here on the Solar Systems website that we looked at, the good fine folks over at Solar System Scope, they do have, if you scroll down, a texture for stars and Milky Way. So I downloaded that. I have that already in my textures collection. So I'm going to do a little sneaky move here. I'm going to grab my background light, and I'm just going to shrink it down a little bit. this isn't critical that you do this, but I'm just going to shrink it down just a little bit. You might have to tap the F key to actually see if you're scaling it or not. That's not really going to change the intensity too much. And then under Arnold, I'm going to add myself in a new sky dome light that sits outside of that. And it's now going to have a color that I'm going to attach a file to. And that file is going to be that really pretty stars and Milky Way image that I downloaded to my project. Let me just jump into my textures folder, and yeah, I've got it in here as my Milky Way. It's gonna be really cool here in a second. Arnold, render, and we should see some stars. Really cool. Now let me jump back down into my scene so I can see what's going on. And I'll throw the renderer up. Right on. Cool. So it's the time to consider before you send this off to the render farm, before you start rendering out all of your frames, to really spend some time thinking about what it is you want to see, how it is you want to frame it, etc. Okay, I think I'm happy with that for now. Once more, paint around the surface, come back in later and maybe muck around with the lighting a little bit more. But I do need to get an animated camera in. Now I did create a camera earlier from View, so View, once more, just for memory's sakes. Or we can always create a camera from View. I did that earlier, so I have one sitting down here called Main Camera. Now I'm gonna try something fun. I've got a camera in place right now, which shows me the entire view of my solar system. So this might be where I want my animation to end. When I finish flying through and zooming around the solar system and having fun moving the camera through the space, this might be the spot where I want it to end. So that's why it's critical now to sort of frame up what it is you want to see and think about what the last shot is going to be, so that it gives you a bit of direction as to where the camera needs to go. Now I'm going to do something advanced in here in just a moment. You don't have to do this, but it's just something I want to do because I know that at frame 1, I've done all of this work at the Earth. I've got the moon going around, I got the clouds spinning around, I got all this hard work that I put into the textures of Earth. So I do want to, spend a little bit of time maybe just looking at Earth before it starts to take off and spin around. So the Earth is where I'm going to start my animation, and where the camera is right now is where I'm going to end my animation. So wouldn't it be awesome if we could somehow, some way, create a motion path that would allow us to fly around space and then starting here at Earth and ending where the camera currently is? Well, we already know how to use these things called motion paths. So I'm going to go to top view for now. And I see way out here, I've got myself a camera. I'm not going to worry about the animation of the camera right now. These objects that I have in the background, these new lights, my background light, this other new sky dome light, I'm going to give it a better name. This is actually my stars and Milky Way. Just make sure I give it a good name. I'm going to hide them, so I'm going to just tap the H key. The background lighting, I'm going to tap the H key because I don't want that to get into the way of my work here. And this is where I wish I had a 72-inch monitor, because what I'm about to do now is target this camera hanging out way down here with a motion path that's going to start at Earth here, and so I'm going to start drawing a curve. So how do we do that? Now at the beginning of the semester we tried to use Illustrator as a way to create a curve, and then we brought that curve in. But there's a wonderful set of drawing tools inside of Maya now, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think this was only started back in Maya version 2018, where they actually released this version of their Bezier curves. So under Create, we can create, and we got to be careful when we're using this because it's not exactly like Illustrator, but we can create a Bezier curve, which is similar to the pen tool. Once again, I've said this to my students a million times, the pen tool is everywhere, my friends. The pen tool is going to be found all over the place. So I want to start looking at the Earth. So that's where my motion path is going to start. So I'm going to click and drag, okay? And then I get my controller handles. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'm going to maybe fly out to here. Now, let me think about this for a second. This is an important move. This step is very important. Now, I know all of my planets are currently spinning in a clockwise manner. So if my camera starts to move clockwise, then I might be moving along, I will be moving along with my planets. And that might be really nice to move along with them so that it sort of seems to slow down the motion of my planets, which is right now currently a bit of a problem in my project. And you'll see here what I'm talking about here in a second. Now, I do want to see the sun a little bit in this first shot. So when I click and drag, and sometimes I need to just double check and test. So you see what happened there? You gotta look very, very carefully that curve went a little bit wild because I clicked in that and dragged into the right direction. So I created the tension the wrong way. So I gotta click and drag to the left, and then click and drag to the left. Oh, it's doing it again. It's giving me that woo curve, and that's gonna define its motion, so I don't want that. So let me make sure if I click and drag to the right, and then I click and drag, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. You gotta practice, practice, practice. So click and drag to the right, and that's gonna tell it to go in this direction. Now, for some reason, weird Maya, I have to click, oh, it's making the whoop-de-doo again. You know what, I'm not gonna worry about it right now, because invariably I'm gonna have to go to each one of these control points, anchor points, and I'm gonna have to manipulate them in the future. So anyway, I'm gonna start down here at Earth. I'll tweak this point in a minute here. I'm gonna come out here to about midway. I can adjust all of this in my motion path later. And then I might zoom out as far as sort of the extents of my motion. I'm just playing right now, really. And then maybe I'll come over here. And then in the end, I know that I want to land near my camera, like so. So maybe one trip around will do. We can always redo this. It's not a long process. So that might be my entire motion, like so. Now keep in mind that this is an isometric view. I'm looking at top down, so everything is now currently flat. My curve is flat. If I go back to perspective view, I can press my, I can go into object mode, and I'm just gonna get out of my curve here and tap the return key. I tap the enter key in order to finish my curve off. Now, if I right click on the curve and go to control vertices, oh, cool. Now I can actually grab each one of them and I can move them around. So lest me forget that I want to target this position, my last control point is going to be up there at the, it's going to be up at the camera. So I'm going to spend some time to try to smooth out my curve, just like you would in Illustrator. And yeah, you can grab each one of these handles, and this is with the move tool. So press the W key to get to my move tool. Yeah, you can adjust this just like in Illustrator. It's awesome. All right, so move that up like so. Maybe I want to manipulate the curve so it's smoother on the up axis. Yeah, super cool. Now, don't forget, I had that problem at the beginning where my curve had this little whip-de-doo in it. It was going whee into the earth. So I'm going to grab that control point and I'm just going to move that around like so. And this is just a matter of refining over time, you know, just tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. All right, I think what I'll do for now is just kind of leave it at that until I have my camera mounted on these rails. Kind of interesting to think of it that way, like in cinematography, you would have an actual rig set up with rails so that you could have your camera follow this, or maybe it would be like a jib arm or something like that. So that's what we're creating here virtually. All right, so let us attach the camera to the motion path. So my camera's hanging out over here, way out here in space, and this is where I want it to end. Now, be very careful. This animation is supposed to be 480 frames. So if I had any other number here in the left field, this would be my region, and I attached that camera to the motion path, it would adopt this number of frames. So I need to make sure this is intended to happen over the entire animation. Well, maybe it's going to stop for the last 2 seconds, let's pretend. So I can actually decrease this range, and we can manipulate this later in the animation graph. But maybe I'll make this 420. We can manipulate that later. But this is going to dictate what and I'm going to have to do a save here. I just saw an error pop up. So I'm going to save my scene as, I got a lot of tuts here, some tutorials, so number 9. Okay, so by defining this region here, when I do the attach, and I got to go over to my animation, drop down here, just for ease, I'm going to grab this object, shift, grab the curve, or you could do that from the outliner by clicking Control. So I'm going to grab those 2 objects, make a box, and then under Constrain, I'm going to attach it to the motion path. You'll see the number here pop up as a keyframe on the motion path, and that's 420, and that relates directly to the number that I had punched in down here. So I think I got something going. Now, I press the play button, and we'll see the camera nicely takes off. Now let me just frame up everything by tapping the A key. I'm going to rewind to frame 1 and press the play button. You'll see that the camera goes, let me just highlight it there, stop, rewind, and play. So the camera does have this nice acceleration, and then in the end at 420, it's going to have this nice deceleration. And that's because of the easing that's created by the curve in the animation, the graph that's creating this, the transform for XYZ. And right now, even the rotation. But if I look through this camera, let me just file save before I do this. When I look through the camera, and the way I do that is just under Panels, Perspective, and there's my main camera. I can look through it. It's gonna look pretty wonky right now because I don't have anything that my camera is currently looking at. Interesting. And it's kind of flopping around and zipping around because the rotation of my camera is really jarring right now. It's going up sort of like on a roller coaster ride around that path. So how do I fix that? Well, I would like to look at something. You know, I'd like to tell the camera to look at a thing. So there's a wonderful feature, one of the camera types, and you can create them if you're not using a motion path very easily. Create a camera and an aim, and that's what it's going to look at. Okay, cool. But right now, if I tried to change the camera type, and I just have to highlight it and look at the main camera shape, under the controls here for camera attributes, if I tried to change to camera aim, I'm going to get an error that says there's already an input that's controlling rotation. Because ultimately what the aim does is it affects the rotation of what that object is. So we know how to fix that through our channel box editor here, right? All we need to do is grab our X, Y, and Z rotates and break that connection. So the motion path is no longer controlling the rotate of the camera. So then when we go back to the attribute editor, we're allowed to change it to camera and aim. Awesome. So the camera is now looking at something, right? And it creates the aim in this ridiculous spot way out here in space. But we can drag it on over. And this is where it's nice to look at things now in split view here. So I can make one of my windows my persp view, my perspective, and then my panel over here can be my camera. Cool. Nice. And I can start to frame up my shot by moving my look around. What is it that I want this to look at? And I'm not going to waste any time over here trying to worry about putting my textures on, because I'm in animation mode right now. So let me just bring this one up big, and I'm just going to hit the play button. So now that we've changed the rotation, we've broken the constraints on the rotation. We're not seeing the camera doing this rotation yaw, we call it, where it's actually like turning left and right on its y-axis and making sort of this nauseous motion. And then it goes up the way we want it at the end, and it should approach 420 and end. So I'm going to change this back. I want my region to be the full 480. I'm going to press the stop button. I'm going to make this 480. Press enter. And now look at the motion at the end. So it does come up to that height, and at 420 it eases into place, decelerates nicely into place, and then we've got that framing almost the way we want. Because don't forget, when I created the camera, I didn't have an aim object yet. Now I do, and the aim is a little bit off center from the sun. So that means that the composition has changed, pushing the sun a little bit over to the left. So now I can animate the aim object if I want to, if need be. And I think I'd like to at the end. But I think before I get there, I'm going to think about the motion path. Because I don't want the whole animation to just show the side of my planets like so. I want to come up a little bit. So let me start looking at this. I'm scrubbing my timeline. Looking at when in the time and space do I want to actually start to change what the camera is looking at. So maybe after about 90 frames, I want the camera to come up a little bit. Just a little bit. So where in the world is my camera at this point? My camera is hanging out along my Bezier curve over here. So if I click on my curve and I go back to my control vertices, the closest neighbor would be this one and this one. These two control verts. And I just held down the shift key and clicked on them both. And now I can click the W button. I can press the W button for my move tool, and I can bring the entire curve up, and you can see on the left-hand side, awesome. I can go down if I want to, I can go up if I want to, right? Because I'm changing the path on which the camera is on, it's still looking at the same thing. And over 90 frames, I'm now making this move where I go up. Now it's a little bit frustrating because I'm currently in this viewport and this one on the left is not working. So I have to hit stop, rewind my view, and then click in the frame, click in the panel that I want to see animated. Maybe for the first time, I'll pop back out here into my, frustrating. Panels, perspective, main camera. I forgot for some reason. I'll tap the space bar and then I'll press play. And I'll see how I go now up onto the motion path. And it's going back down again because I still have the other control vertices to work out. But that's fine. That's totally cool. And it stops nicely. I think now I might consider where I'm going to put the final frame. So take a time and really think about where all of these different control vertices are. So I think I can grab all of these at once over here. I'm going to rotate this around just so I can see what's low on the horizon. And I'm going to grab this guy and this guy, and I'm going to bring them up as well. And don't forget, you can grab each one of these handles just like in Illustrator, but what's weird about it is, unlike Illustrator, it's 3D, right? So you can start to smooth it out in space and you can have fun, like maybe you want a wilder ride and go up a little bit higher and then come back down. And this is the beautiful thing about 3D is that we can do impossible things. That's what I love about this art. So yeah. I'm just going to make a little bit more of a fun ride here. And maybe that first move up to the second keyframe, I'm just going to bring that down a little bit. Yeah, and then click on the panel where you have the main camera in view and tap the space bar. I think what I'll do is under view, I'm going to turn on camera settings. Ooh, there's the field chart. That was an accident. I don't need the field chart. I'll turn that off. I need camera settings, safe action. So that gives me my nice green little box that shows me, even when I click on the camera, it'll turn white. It'll show me exactly what's being rendered. Cool, so I'm gonna highlight my main camera, I'm gonna rewind to the beginning, and then I'm gonna press the play button. Now at the very beginning, you saw that I had something framed up. I think it's the planet Earth, I hope it is. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pause on the Earth for, 2 seconds. For 2 seconds, I just wanna see the Earth because I did so much work on it. So there's a trick that I'm gonna have to do in a moment here so that the Earth doesn't just take off. Because everything is on motion paths, it just starts at frame 1 and then goes. So I need to pause the frame before the Earth moves. And I think I'm starting to like this motion on the path. But I need to pause Earth for just a moment. And I can do that very easily inside of my motion graph, which is great. The only problem I'm having right now, this is maybe not a problem at all, actually. Composition is everything in life. Light and composition, repetition, color, all of these wonderful things we have. You're studying that in other courses. If I were to put the sun in the center, I don't think this shot would be as interesting as it could be. So maybe what I'll do, I'm gonna think for a second about this camera aim and what is it actually looking at. At the beginning, it's looking here. And I'm just going to turn on my textures to make sure that I'm indeed looking at that cloud layer. Fire that up. Yeah, so I am looking at Earth. And this is my camera aim. And I'm just going to move that around inside of, whoa, it's kind of a little bit, gotta be careful. For some reason, the aim is very, very finicky when I move it in this viewport. So I might want to just look over here at the translate inside of the transform attributes for the aim. And yeah, that's much smoother. I'm holding down the command key. I'm assuming that's alt key for a PC, and I can click and drag the integer value in translate right up here. So I can just hold down command or alt and click and drag, and it gives me these micro moves, these micro integer increase and decrease in value. And just render. I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna fire up Arnold because it sometimes crashes. Save before you hit the render button. And here we are getting the beach ball of fun. Well, I have to say I'm glad I saved because Arnold crashed Maya for me. And good thing I saved just before I tried to do a render. One thing I want to point out when we go back to our render settings, one thing we need to tell the system to do, absolutely at this stage, is to make sure that we're telling in our common settings for Arnold Renderer, let's tell this to render always the main camera. So when we send this out to the render farm, it's going to know that it's going to use that, and we're currently once again at 1920 by 1080. Let's see if this doesn't crash again. So now that we've informed the system to use that camera, I'm going to try to see what this is looking like. Now I've done a little bit of extra work on the night lights of Earth. So I'm looking at the back side of Earth right now. And at the end of this tutorial, I'll quickly go through the shader that allows you to do that. Now I'm not really seeing what I want, which is, you know, a lot of planet Earth right now. So I might want to manipulate the camera a little bit more at the beginning here. So this is going to take some tweaking at a very local level. So I'm going to go down really, really close in on Earth like so. And think about what it is I want to look at for a second here. This motion path obviously is dictating what it is I'm seeing, and I'm looking at the backside of Earth. So I can grab this path. I'm going to go to the control vertices. I'm going to grab this control vert, W key. I'm going to grab the green, now yellow little box here, and I'm going to move that over to here. And then I'm going to actually get in real close, grab the control points, the look here, the aim, and change what it is that I'm aimed at. Okay, and see what that's looking like in my texture view. Oh, I got a nice little view of Jupiter there. And file save, because I know this is going to crash from time to time. So I hit render. Cool. Now I'm starting to see Earth a little bit better. I'm not sure if this is actually rendering from, oh, it's rendering from top shape. So in this view, I do have to go back to the main camera shape here. Awesome. Now I'm seeing a little bit more of a beautiful view of Earth, which is really awesome. Okay. Now this is also an opportunity for me to think, am I happy with the way the camera is seeing the world? Because right now its field of view is 35 millimeter camera. Maybe I want to change the angle of view a little bit, just so I can see more of the universe. That is obviously going to influence way down the line what we're going to see in the final render. So now everything out here has gotten really small, and that's not really great. So I might want to animate that property as well. So I'm just going to hit another render. See what that's looking like. I don't want it from top shape. I want main camera shape. That's awesome. And like I said earlier, I do want to see the Earth a little bit more. I'm going to bring the camera out just a bit so I see more of the planet. And this is what we do. Tweak, tweak, tweak. Go in, right click, control verts. I'm going to grab that control vert. I'm going to move the camera's first frame back. I'll make sure I'm grabbing the right thing. I moved the camera and not the control vertices. So grab the path, control vert. There we go. Now this should move the camera because it's attached to it. I'm going to bring it further away from Earth so I can see more of stuff going on. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. And like I said earlier, I want to look at the Earth for a few seconds or couple of seconds. So right now, if I press play, everything's just going to take off. Right? If I go back and look at it from this perspective, from frame 1, if I hit play, everything's just going to take off. So I don't really have a chance to enjoy looking at Earth for any amount of time. So how do I fix that? Well, let's go back into the animation workflow here. Animation. And I'm going to be very careful to choose my Earth surface because that's truly what's being animated. And down here in the set of things that are being animated, I can see I've already manually rotated my Y, but the X value, Z and Y, is currently being manipulated by this motion path. Now a little bit of review. If we think about it, we've grabbed both of these keyframes and underneath the curves, we've told it post infinity to cycle. Not pre, but post. So everything after this motion is going to cycle, but nothing before it. So theoretically, I can grab these two and I can move them over. So I can grab these keyframes and I can slide them over. Now, one thing that kind of is tricky is if I click and drag a box and then I try to move, I have to grab the actual curve itself to drag it all. If I try to grab both with a box and then grab a keyframe, it will isolate that key and just extend its duration. So I have to grab both keys by clicking and dragging a box and then grab the actual motion, not the handle. That'll go wee, but I got to grab the actual handle. Sorry, I have to actually grab the path. And once more, I do have this constraint. So by default, this little tool over here, this will allow us to move it up and down and all around. I just want to push it over so that it starts at a different time. I've also clicked this up here to frame my entire motion or the entire time so I can see more of the time. So there's my frames along the top. So I want this to start, say, at 50. So I'm going to grab both of my keyframes and then click and drag that over constrained. So it doesn't start until frame 50. Cool. Now at the same time, well, what about my camera now? It's going to take off as well. So if I go down to my camera object, my main camera, well, it's on a motion path. And it has, and there's that nice curve. I'm going to leave this. I'm not going to make this linear because I want this to have this nice easing in and easing out. I can match this by grabbing this keyframe and dragging it over to roughly 50. So it's going to have an opportunity to look at the Earth for this period of time, and then it's going to start moving. So let's just look, make sure we're looking through panels, perspective, main camera. I'm going to scroll out here. Why aren't you letting me do that in this view? Oh, because the camera's locked. Haha. I'm gonna press the play button. So now I get to see the Earth do its thing and then it takes off. Right? So it's got a moment there to just take a look at the surface of the Earth, enjoy it for a second, and then boom, it takes off. Cool. Now I might think for a second here that the motion of it taking off is a little bit too aggressive. The Earth just suddenly pops and seems to take this aggressive motion off into space, like that. So how do I fix that? Well, I can go back to my Earth surface. Now, this is advanced stuff. And I could, tricky, very tricky actually. I could say that for this motion here, I could ease it in by turning down the motion, making it, but this has got a post infinity on it, so it's going to loop like this over and over and over again. So I think I might just have to live with it, actually. I mean, without it being very, I could duplicate this. And then do a separate animation for the beginning so it leaves in a much more smoother motion. But that's going to take a whole lot of time. So I think I'm going to just live with what I got here. I think I'm just going to live with it. Now I do have to make the decision now. Do I enjoy the amount of time that I'm looking at it? Maybe what I'll do is just go to the motion path of the moon, or sorry, of the Earth, and be careful, choose that Earth surface. And I'm just going to move that over. I'm going to move that motion path over. So it starts maybe at 79. I don't know. This is art at this point. And just rewind and press the play button and see what that's going to look like. It's got a little bit of an awkward bump at the beginning, but I think I can live with it. So I look at the Earth, I go to the backside, and then I take off. Neat. So this is just giving me the opportunity to look at the planet for a little bit of time here. Cool. And I'm going to jump all the way down to the end. I'm going to go back to my general view here. File save. And don't forget, I did change the field of view for the camera. So the main camera here now has a larger angle of view. Over here, I set it up. I'll just dial that into 85. I like my round numbers, my big numbers. So I'm gonna, at the end here, I'm gonna manipulate my camera. I'm not gonna animate the angle of view. I'm just gonna position my camera differently. The easiest way to do that is on the motion path itself. So where is it gonna land in the end? So this is the game. This is what animators do. They tweak, tweak, tweak. So my motion path here, I'm gonna grab that final frame, and it does have this pretty big whoop-de-doo at the end here. So this is a good chance to consider changing this. I'm gonna right-click on the motion path, click on it, right-click, Control verts, and I'm looking carefully over here at what's actually being framed. And I'm gonna grab the green box, it'll turn yellow, and then I'm gonna move it in closer, like so, maybe over to here. Cool, what is it looking at? It's looking at the aim. I'm not loving the composition right now. I'm gonna tweak this one just to smooth it out a little bit. And it's aimed, so maybe I'm gonna take it all the way out over to here. Now the composition's getting really wonked out. It's getting really wonky, but I wanna bring it in closer. so I can fill my frame. I'll bring this control vert in. My aim now is, it's way out there. Curious. My aim looks like it reset itself. C'est la vie. C'est la vie. I'm going to zoom back to frame 1. Grab my aim object. Position it where I want it. For some reason it's gone down. I may have accidentally selected it. And I'm just looking around in my quad view because I can easily work more accurately on each one of these arrows to do the transform a little bit much more accurate, in a much more accurate manner. I can position exactly where I want it. So I want it to look at Earth. Think about my composition for the beginning. Okay, when you move that in the camera view, it gets a little bit crazy. That's why it's nice to use the ISO views, the top side and front, to move the camera aim around. File save, Arnold render. Still using side shape, main camera, cool. Nice. Nice, nice. And then I can scrub down a little bit more. I'm going to click on the main camera. Don't forget I'm in panels, perspective, main camera. Up here, and I can scrub. What's it going to look like here? Arnold render. I'm going to make all these decisions now before I send it off to the farm. Because I think the trick is going to be from the early frames to what I'm at 70-ish frames, I'm going to move the look. And here we are crashing once more. So yet another crash. I'm back at it again. Trying to refine this animation of me coming out around the Earth here. I'm just going to look at this specifically from this view through my camera. I think everything's looking great. It does this kind of weird move to the right and then it loops around. So I think what I want to do is start to think about moving my aim. Because I want my aim at about this point here to start looking towards the sun. That's a good idea. I think at this point here, I get to look at the back side of the Earth. So roughly around here, I'm just going to lock a keyframe down for my aim at around here. So it's going to continue to look at its current position. I'm going to highlight my aim. I'm going to go on over to my channel box editor. And all three of these keyframes, and I just held shift down, I'm just going to right click and key selected. So I get these red indicators that I do have a keyframe there. And then I'm going to scrub down my timeline just a little bit. And I'm going to translate the position of my aim. And I can do that just by holding down Command and dragging up in here. So I'm going to animate it to go over to about here and just look down a little bit maybe. That'd be fun. And I'll grab all three of those and I'm going to key selected. So it actually does this. Yeah, that's great. Press play. Might be a little bit wonky. All of this is part of animation. You've got to smooth it out later. Now the thing is, you know, we could have tried to just follow Earth on its motion path and that would have gotten rid of this sort of bumpy motion like this. But that might be difficult to track it. Let's just double check that. See how that's looking. I think before I go to the render farm, I'm gonna probably spend another, half hour or so just really messing around with what it is that the camera is doing at the beginning. And I'm not gonna put it in this tutorial, just to smooth out that motion, because that's part of the process, is tweaking. Now at the very end of my animation here, I'm not really liking what it is that the camera is looking at. So once more, we can animate that. We can animate exactly where that camera aim is looking. So I think I like it here. So I'm gonna just put in a keyframe. Like so, key selected. And then when we get about over to here, I'm gonna think about the final composition. I'm gonna go to the end of my animation. And don't forget, it stops somewhere around 420. So at 420, I'm gonna change the position of my camera aim so that I can get a nice final composition. And just holding down I can just drag on the number itself, which is fantastic, and just frame everything up. I'm just gonna offset it just a little bit on the X, just so that the sun is not necessarily right on the, well, it's kind of tricky because we are having, we want to see all of the planets and stuff. So yeah, we're moving along this path. We go out really far and then we come back in. Oops, I forgot to set the keyframe. That's important. Yeah, like that. And then highlight all of those inputs, and then we're going to key select it like so. So that's going to be where the camera ends up at the end of my animation. Yeah, I'm going to have to do a little bit of work at the beginning there to smooth out that jump. But I get to zoom out, look around my solar system. And maybe from time to time, I want to start looking at the, maybe I want to start looking at the solar system a little bit closer. So that's the awesome part about having this now on a motion path, is that I can easily, maybe think that, oh, okay, well, way out here, maybe I don't want to go out that far. So right click, control vertices. I can start bringing it in tighter. I just dragged a box over those two control vertices, move tool, move that in tighter. This is camera literally on a rail. So, when you're moving this around, this is exactly what the camera is going to do. So it's going to follow that path. So where is my camera around this time in space? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna grab my camera, and in the attribute editor, I'm just gonna make it scale real big. I'm gonna set it up to 10, 10, 10. That way I can just see it a lot better. There we go. Could have done that earlier on. So I can actually see where it is on that path. Yeah, neat. And that's now framing this up pretty nicely because I just brought the motion path in closer. And then how does it look at the end? I could, right about now, animate the position of that aim, but I kind of like the idea that it's, you know, moving off to the side like that. It's kind of neat. Yeah, this is not a quick process. Animation is never a quick process. And the comment I made in class was that, you know, I don't want the camera flying around the scene, you know, just wildly. If you notice that over the entire animation, I did it it's very smooth. I mean, that's not, I need to smooth that out. But as it's rotating around one rotation around the solar system, it's slow. It's not flying around 3 or 4 times. It's nice and smooth. Yeah. So let me just take a gander over here. That's pretty much the end of my animation. So I'm just going to file save because I think it's going to crash again. Save changes. Why are you? Yes. What just happened there? Did I do an accident? I made an accident. No, tutorial 9, this happens. Did I save my work? Yes, I did. All right, so, Arnold's render. I think I created a new scene. Now, let's not forget that earlier on I hid these 2 objects, right? My lights. So this background light, you might not use it. Shift H, I'm gonna bring it back into the scene, highlight it, Shift H. Now I've got my Milky Way back up. And the other thing too is that the Milky Way, because I added that file earlier of the texture that I got from these fine folks over here, it is a light, so I can increase its intensity. So this is gonna pump up the intensity of the stars. Save, scene. Arnold render. Please don't crash. This has been my whole day. This is why this tutorial's been taking me so long, and it crashed again. Okay, I'll be back in a moment. You know, I really hope some point in the next 40 years, Autodesk actually produces a version of Maya that doesn't crash whenever I use its tools. Anyway, at least I can laugh about it. I'm gonna try it again. Arnold render, just to get a preview of what things are doing now that I've got those lights turned on. Things are looking pretty. Things are looking quite nice. Let me just turn off my imager on the side there and scroll out a little bit. And this is all, yeah, of course, obviously about composition. So that was the wrong view. So let me try this again and hopefully it won't crash. Arnold render, there we go. So make sure it's looking through the main camera shape. There we go. So I think invariably this is going to be a beautiful looking thing. I mean, you know, the sun should be a lot bigger. And you could arguably, like if you're thinking that now is the time to start messing around with things, you can grab all of your rings. This is what I love about motion paths. You can grab each one of these rings. This won't break anything. You have the chance right now, I don't need my background, and just, you could literally scale it out. Because, you know, if I wanted to, I can just make everything spread out a little bit more. That does impact my composition. And then go into each one and, you know, push them out just a little bit. Now's the time to make this call before you go to the render farm. I think my inner planets I'm going to leave well enough alone because I did so much work on Earth. But yeah, the sun object, because we did so much hard work parenting it. Actually, I didn't parent it to the lights. Yeah, but now's the time to make all of those critical decisions and frame everything up just beautifully. I'm going to undo all of those things that I just did because I'm pretty satisfied with what I've got going on here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I'm going to going to live with for now. When you all see my final production in class, when I send this off to the render farm, there's going to be changes and I'm not going to belabor this tutorial with that. You know, for example, like right about here, I think now's the time for me to move the camera's aim a little bit, because I do want to center off my, I want to center off the composition a little bit better at that point in time. So I can always go into the main camera group, grab that aim, go to the channel box. At this point in time, you know, maybe I want to move the X over a little bit, like so. And then just bake in that keyframe. Yeah, this has got some cool factor going on. Maybe right around here, I want to be looking a little bit over towards the X, a little bit further that way. Yeah, it's all about, you know, just taking the time. Yeah, that beginning is going to have to be cleaned up a little bit. Now you want to be careful not to add too many keyframes along the timeline, because it can get pretty janky and things can get looking pretty weird. And that's why we've got our good friend Play Blast. Why does it keep doing that? File, save scene. That's why we have our good friend Play Blast. So we can always, you know, fire out a Play Blast just to see what's going on. And take your time to really just smooth out awkward moments. And don't forget, you can always go into the keyframe editor in the graph editor of animation and start really manipulating each one of those keyframes to smooth stuff out. I think I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing right now, at least after the Earth takes off. I want to take some time to address that. Slows down nicely at the end there. Cool. Now, just to point out something about, you know, easing, for example, if I go over to my animation here, and you get to see, right, okay, so I've currently got my camera aim selected. You start to see that this can get complicated. Now I got all these keyframes happening, and I can tweak them, right? So maybe I want my aim to ease in a little bit smoother than it currently is. So I can grab that handle and tweak it down. So maybe it doesn't move as fast right away. You can grab each one of these keys and move them around. I'm gonna try something a little bit funky for the Earth. I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but this is my curious brain. So this is my rotation, is the green line. The motion path is this blue one. I wonder, I don't think I'm going to be allowed to do this. I don't think at this point, because it's currently constrained by the, I mean, what I would love to do right now is duplicate this motion. And I don't think it's going to let me do that because it's on the path. What I'd love to do is ease this motion in, like so. But the problem is with this, what I'm trying to do here is that now, because this is post-infinity, that easing is going to happen every time this loops. And you'll see what I mean here when I press play. It's gonna always, when it finishes its motion, it's gonna ease into its motion again. You see that? Earth has just got that weird moment where it stops and starts again, because it's looping. Puzzly. interesting problem. So it's going to take a little bit of figuring for me to get that working. I wish what I was hoping I could do was do a little bit of pre-animation before the post-infinity. Do a little bit of work out here before it actually starts to follow its motion path. But I think even though I'm on these keyframes here, see, it's sitting still in space, and that's not great right now. Well, let's look at it. Maybe the fact that I just moved that over is kind of left, you know, made it a little bit less apparent. You know, visual effects often I mean, it's not ideal, but you have to take everything with, you know, any happy accidents that come along, work with them. Work with them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you can get away with something and it visually doesn't bother the eye, then, you know, just go for it. I'm trying to figure out why that's so janky right in there. And I think that's the camera's aim. The camera aim. If I go back into animation here. Maybe if I just grab that aim and move it over, like so, and get that curve looking nice and smooth. Whenever you see spiky motion, it often alludes to something not being fantastic in terms of the motion. So let me just grab these two here and slide those over. I actually don't even need keyframes on that property. So I'm just going to delete those. There we go. There we go. Now we're talking. Keep hitting the spacebar. Bad habit. I keep hitting the spacebar. Spacebar is not play in this program. That's from using way too much DaVinci Resolve. Oh, it's still there. Okay, that's not that. What object am I on now? Camera aim. Camera aim. Where does it get? There's something strange right there. Maybe the motion is too aggressive. So I'm going to move this up. Yeah. Translate X, translate Y. Camera. Yeah, I'm just looking specifically at both of these objects. I mean, camera group, just to see where this, is it because the dive is too fast in the dip in this keyframe? Maybe if I bring this up. Yeah, it's not letting me grab hold of that anchor. It did earlier. Zoom in really close with my... That's really annoying. There we go. I just needed to change my my tool over here. I'm going to try to ease that in. Press the play button, ease it in. Better, better. Tweak, 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 tweak. This is how we do. Now, just to finish this off, I'm just gonna do a quick review. So some things that I did. I added in this background light and I reduced its size just a little bit. I scaled it down just a little bit. You can see over here in the channel editor, I made it 0.5. And that's just to sort of light up the entire scene. If we look at its power, it's really low. It's really, 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 really low. And that's just going to gently light up the backside of our planets. Just a little bit. And then I added in another Arnold Skydome light, and I gave it the color file, and I loaded in this texture from the website here. The stars and Milky Way from Solar System Scope. And that's giving me the stars in the background. I spent some good long time working on that motion path. And do keep in mind, I do not want you to, and this is a bad habit I think some people have when they're working on curves. I'm just gonna hide these big old things in the background, and I'm just gonna create a curve. I think a lot of people make this mistake early on. So I'll make a Bezier curve. They'll go click, 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 to make a curve. Now this is going to be a really tough thing to edit, and it's going to be a very, very aggressive and janky camera move. So with Bezier curves, you always want to click and drag to give yourself a handle. That's going to give you some nice curvature. And to make it all the way around, I only used 1, 2, 3, 4. Mine I had 5 or 6, really, but they're not 100 or 20. There's just a few. And then on these curves, you just right click, choose control vertices, and then you can click and drag a box with the left mouse button. And with your move tool, W key, you can move around these control points in all axes. So up, down, left and right, X, Y, and Z, you can move these around. And then you can grab each one of these handles and you can adjust how close it is to being a cusp, how curvy it is. You have a lot of control, and that's going to be where you put your motion path. Yeah. Now the move I did with Earth, where I looked at it for a few seconds, so that's advanced stuff, and it's caused some problems for me, but I'm going to solve for that later. But I do want to just sort of look at the Earth for a little bit of time. Now I did promise to show you this, and I do want to thank a student in class. I won't name names, but you know who you are. I was so busy doing other work during Student Success Week that I kind of left this out of the picture, but somebody solved for this, and they were kind enough to gift me the knowledge, which was awesome. That's why I love working with students. I get to learn along with you as you solve things yourselves. So currently we had Earth's surface sort of looking like this, where we did a lot of hard work with our normal mapping and our day map, and we worked really hard on the specular map. One thing I did do on the actual JPEG itself, I spent a little bit of time messing around with color gain and things like that, just to turn down the Earth's surface's specularity. You can mess around in here. I put it in this color, actually yes, it was in the color correction node where we did the invert, where I played around with saturation, contrast, and stuff. And that really did help to reduce the specularity and the shininess of the water. Okay. So what a student helped me to discover was this amazing move here. This is fantastic. So adding in a mix shader, so you right click, create node, right click, where are you, create node? There we go, create node. Add in an AI mix shader. I won't show you how to do the rest. Add in what's called an AI facing ratio, a ramp, and a gamma correct, and tie all of those together, okay? And push that into the mix. Create a new AI standard surface, and the only thing that is going into this node is, and I pumped this into my emission channel, was the night map that they gave us over here. And then I haven't perfected the settings on this yet, but the facing ratio looks like that. The ramp looks like this. It had to be inverted. So black is on the right and white is somewhere over here. And this is what I got to work on here, is my gamma correct. So this is a fascinating node. This means facing rays that are coming at the object. So rays being light coming from the sun. So if it's lit on this side, then don't show this texture, which is the night. It is brilliant. And then with our Earth night map coming through emission, it's giving off light now. Go into our mix shader, and arguably this could have been pumped into probably the base color as well, and it would achieve the similar effect. We'll see if that works now that I've changed it. So we've got the older surface we made being mixed together with this new AI standard surface that's happening in this mix shader here, and what's driving the mix is this brilliant set of nodes here, the facing ratio, the ramp, and the gamma correct. And then the out color from our mix shader goes into our AI standard surface. And this is the resultant. There's light all around this right now, so we can't see what's going on. But in the actual scene, what we can enjoy, let me just save again. If I go over to my Earth, I grab my Earth surface, and I'm gonna actually make this panel perspective so I don't screw up my camera. Tap the space key. You have to be really careful, like if you're jumping around with your main camera. If you're looking through main camera and you're moving the viewport, then you're actually moving your camera. So perspective, Earth surface, I'm gonna focus on it. Now on the back side, file save, Arnold render. Nothing's happening because it's not lit. So if I go back to my hypershade, and rather than having that go into my, ooh, crashy. Come on, Art, come on, Maya, you can do it. Oh, you did it, yay. I'm so stressed out by this crashing all the time. So instead of me pushing that into base, I'm going to push this into emission. So now it's creating light. And I do have to do some manipulation on my ramps, because that's telling it where the light should be. And save. Now that we're looking on the back side and that's mixed. Let's see what's going on here. We're seeing the backside of Earth being lit up. Yeah, I'm gonna spend a little bit more time on the front end of my animation, trying to smooth out Earth and make it look really, really awesome. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'm gonna leave the tutorial at that. There's a lot of information packed in here. It's been a long one again. But yeah, that's it. That's the finished product. And this is ready to go off to the render farm. I'm gonna put it away and come back in a couple of days and look at it again and tweak, and make it just really beautiful, so that when I send it off to the render farm and spend the money that it's gonna take to actually get it rendered, that I know that it's gonna look fantastic. All right, everybody, happy animating. Have a good time, and email me if you have any questions. I think what I'll do is I'll be opening up all of these projects and taking a look at them to make sure that the cameras are nice and smooth, that your render settings are good. And once more, just to take a look at your render settings up here, we do want to make sure that our renderable camera is set to main camera and that our width and height is set to 1920 by 1080. All right, everybody, save, and have fun.